Okay, I'm going to call the meeting in order at 7:30. Roll call, William Johnston.
Here.
Thomas Graffinino.
Here.
Lynn Colligan.
Here.
Lisa Kreckler.
Here.
Diorio is here. We also have present Tim Hill, a CBA attorney. Our first order of business is to review and approve the May 14th, 2025 minutes. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have 4 applications on the hearing agenda tonight. The first is 3 Locust Avenue Cumming. I'm going to recuse myself as I have on the prior hearings on this. The applicant is a friend of mine, so I'm going to hand this over to you.
Enjoy.
Okay, our first application today is 3 Locust Avenue Cummings. This is a continuation. Since our last hearing, we did receive revised plans from the applicant, and we also received a letter from the Shelter Island Heights property owners continuing to object to the application. Is there anybody here to present on this application? Matt, are you?
Yep. Hey, good evening. I was trying to unmute. Matt Sherman, Sherman Engineering and Consulting. I'm here again on behalf of the owner, William Cummings. This is the last, hopefully, of several hearings that we've had on this one. The plans that we submitted to y'all were the ones that I started to go over at the last meeting. However, I had not gotten them to you in time, so you had a chance to look at them prior to the hearing. Basically, what this set of plans does is it reduces the size of the deck to just under 300 square feet. We've got 2 rooms that we want to have access to this deck. One from basically the middle of the building. There's a bay window there that we want to turn into a set of French doors. That's denoted in blue on the east elevation of that drawing that we got you guys. And it's called out saying replace a window with new double doors. That comes out to the middle of the deck, which is in the middle of the building. And then to the left of that, there's a second room that would have access to this deck. And there's a window that's going to be opened up into a doorway for that second section of deck. Because this building is a double use building. It's got single family dwelling, single family residence, and it's also a bed and breakfast. So in the interest that the board had some concerns about too many people congregating on this deck and having access from one room to the other room. So privacy issues, safety issues, things along those lines. So we're proposing to put a railing between those 2 sections of deck so that when one or both of those rooms are occupied, the owner would be able to lock that railing so one room would not have access to the other room. One of the things that a board member, I forget who it was, had asked at the last meeting is we were using as a comparison for this deck some other similar decks that are seen throughout the Heights. The one most notable is 2 doors down at 1 Oxford, and one of the questions was asked how big that deck was. That deck, I used a survey that I've got of the property and an aerial photo. It's approximately 420 square feet is that deck over that covered porch on that property. And we use that as a comparable example, one, because it's only 1 house down. It's 1 house removed from this. It's also in part within a front yard setback. And it's a second floor deck over a first floor covered porch. It's about 100 square feet, a little bit more than that, larger than the deck that we're proposing here. One of the things that I think is key to reiterate, we've gone over this a couple of times already though, is that yes, these rooms are used as bed and breakfast rooms when they're rented out. When they're not rented out, the deck would be used as a personal use deck for the property owner, just as any other residential property in the Heights, just as the one that's at 1 Oxford. So very similar use there. And I'm not going to go back over everything that we've talked about. You guys are going to have a long night ahead of you tonight, so I want to cut this fairly short on my end. But we have shown that these rooftop decks are on buildings that are part of the historic district, that are contributing buildings to the historic district. Similar types of rooftop decks are on buildings that are of the same age as ones in the historic district, but for some reason were not included. They're on residential properties, they're on commercial properties. So this is not a one-off. This is not something that would be breaking new ground or anything to that effect. I know that Mr. Cummings had put up a mock-up of, excuse me, of what the railing would look like. I didn't know if any of the board members had a chance to drive by and see that, but it helped kind of put it in, sometimes it's hard to use your imagination and see how these things would impact the area around. Having that mock-up up there, I think did a good job of showing how small of an impact this would have visually on anybody around the property. And again, I know that the neighbors who are objecting to this, we have one neighbor that's objecting to it, said that their concern is not with noise, it is not with privacy, because we had offered to put up vegetated screening between the properties in order to mitigate that kind of issue. They said that that's not their concern. We would still offer up to put up any kind of vegetation between the two buildings in order to mitigate any kind of concerns of a negative impact that this deck could have on the neighboring property.
I do have one question.
Yes.
Do you have the spec, from what I can see, am I correct in saying that you pulled the deck in a little bit from the edge of the roof on this version?
Yeah.
Do you have,
exactly. So
do you have the square footage of what the first proposal was to what it's pulled back to, the difference?
I can get that for you if you bear with me for just a second.
Sure.
The first deck, the original proposal was 350 square feet plus or minus.
Okay,
So the current proposal is 292. So we're coming back about 60 square feet. Is
perfect.
what
Thank
we've pulled
you.
it in. Yeah.
Great.
Matt, I have a question about, you're talking about this handrail that separates the two sides of the deck. Is that in actuality a gate?
Yeah, it would be a railing and it would have a small gate in it, because when Bill's using it as his own private deck, he would want to have access to both sides. So he would be able to lock that in a way that the property owners would not be able to, or excuse me, not the property owners, the tenants in those two rooms, if and when they're rented out, would not be able to open it up.
Okay, so it would be a gate with a lock on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I know that Bill was concerned that board members hadn't driven by. We had indeed driven by, and then it was helpful to get the photographs and the video. So
Yeah,
thank you for that.
Good. Yeah.
Matt, could you just refresh my memory a little bit? I know the vegetation piece and the privacy. What was the major complaint? The scenic vista, or?
Yeah, there were a couple of complaints. It kind of evolved over the hearings. The first complaint was that they were saying that this was an expansion of a non-conforming use. The board, we didn't have to correct that. The board corrected that. The town let the neighbors know that this is not a non-conforming use. It's a completely legal and allowed use. So that first complaint kind of went away. The next complaint was that there was concerns that tenants or people staying in the bed and breakfast who are out on this deck would be loud. They'd be talking on cell phones. They'd be working on computers. They'd be having, conversations, multiple people up there having conversations. So in response to that, I took that to mean, and Bill took that to mean, that there was a privacy concern, because the neighbors explicitly said that people using that deck would infringe on their use and enjoyment of their front porch. And we respect that. So we said, we'll put vegetation up. We'll, trees that are large enough and thick enough so that it can be a visual and a audio buffer between the use at the Cummings property and the use on the neighboring property who were complaining. So, you know, that was the next round of opposition. I don't believe there was anything else voiced by the neighbors other than those two items, but they can correct me if I'm wrong. I know that there were some issues that the Heights had raised with respect to changes to buildings that are contributing buildings to the historic district. Again, a very valid point, and we take that to heart when we're looking at those other buildings that are within the historic district, some contributing, some not, to show that this is not there's not many of them. That's certainly true, but it's not an unseen type of improvement within the historic district.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Matt from the board?
No.
Matt, do you have anything else for us? Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this application? Yep, please come on forward. Lori.
Hi, good evening. Lori Beard Raymond. I'm here on behalf, speaking for the Shelter Island Heights Property Owners Corporation. I did send a letter in, which you guys have received. And I just want to address a couple of things. It won't take much of your time. First, the ZBA did approve a previous expansion on this property, which you may be aware of, and that was for the property owners' use for their expanding family at the time. So that was already an expansion for the use for those homeowners.
When was that?
I'd have to go back and look, but it's in the ZBA records. So it's in
5 years, 2 years?
no, it was a while ago. It was
There it was.
2000.
Thank you, Ben. Also, the deck examples that have been presented to you are non-contributing structures that are no longer around the National Historic, even though they're on the register, even though they're in the historic district. They're not a historic structure, they're non-contributing. This structure, and that's the difference that we've reiterated in a couple of meetings, this structure is a contributing structure to the historic district as well as within the historic district. And that is a significant difference. Second, I would encourage you to go back and review the neighbors' letters and the Heights letters from the previous hearings, and the previous letters that we sent, because the neighbor did have issues with noise and some other things. So, and I just wanted to point that out. And plantings have already been planted, and they are much, much smaller than what was originally presented to you all and to us. So, they already have something in the ground there. So I don't know if you've seen that. The Shelter Island Heights Chairman of Property and Roads, as well as the Architectural Review Committee, at the invitation of the applicant, did go and visit the site and reviewed the mock-up that they had prepared. But the Heights still continues to object to the proposed second-story deck. And the reasons for that are really twofold. One, that the proposed structure is a contributing historical listed on the National Register as well as the State Register, in addition to being in the historic district. And there are no large decks on contributing structures that are still contributing structures in the historic district. And in addition, the primary use of this deck is for the benefit of transient guests and the property owner. And that's the other difference. The other decks that have been discussed are not for bed and breakfasts, or they were all on single family residents. So that's the difference as well. The committees, I should say, continues to believe that the one immediately adjacent neighbor that has been unsupportive of this project has credible objections, which is why I'm encouraging you to go back and read the letters that that neighbor wrote. So for this reason, we ask the ZBA deny the request. the variance and consider the testimony previously spoken about. So, and we are grateful that the applicant has attempted to revise the deck and make the deck a little bit smaller, but we still feel it is inappropriate on this historic structure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here who wishes to speak?
William Cummings, the applicant. Just want to make clear that when that structure was built, that structure was originally a cabin for the caretaker manager of the Oxford Hall Hotel, which was adjacent. And that porch itself was not there in the early 1900s. And as far as the trees or what have you, if they're too small, I'm more than happy to put in much larger trees immediately that would screen the entire project from the neighbors. I have no problem with that. I put in something smaller, takes a little while to grow, but I'm more than happy to make it so that they can't see it whatsoever. And that's about it. If you have any questions for me, I'd love to answer them.
I do, Bill.
Yes.
You answered, but I wasn't sure of the exact, when was that last ZBA?
Around 2000, 2000, I think, exactly, because it was
What was it for?
finished in 2001. Excuse me?
What was it for? Exactly.
Or my children were in one room with me, and we had to, we had 3 children. We had to have some room for it.
Okay. I just didn't remember.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here or on Zoom who wishes to speak?
Good evening. I'm Pam Demarest. I guess my question on this project, well, I've seen it go from a deck that encompassed the entire width and breadth of the porch. And then it became 2 smaller balconies accommodated just for like a bistro table and an exit out for the rooms, which seemed to make sense, and you were talking about that. And now we have new plans that now, oh no, we're gonna join them again. It seems a little peculiar because I thought that the zoning board really preferred it, that it would be 2 smaller balconies. And I'm just curious because the conversations have come up recently about the Historic Advisory Committee being revamped and reinstated in the town and everything, and being concerned about historic buildings in the town. So I guess my question is, when does a historic building in a historic district change its shape, form, anything additionally expanded in any way, then not be able to stay on the National Registry? When does that take it off the registry because there's been such a change to the historic building that it no longer qualifies? Does anyone happen to know? I'm just curious.
I don't think that's something that falls under the purview of this board.
Yeah?
We don't know what
I don't
this-
know, I don't know, I mean, it's a part of the community character issue that you discuss sometimes, and I just curious if anyone had an idea about that.
Because we don't know
Or if in fact that was of any importance.
The legal, we don't know when the legal change happens, which
Right,
is your
right.
question.
Right, because that's what in essence might happen in this case.
We're not unconcerned with it,
Yeah.
but I can't answer your question.
Yeah, okay, great, well, it was nice to meet you, thanks for the time.
The National Register
Is
determines
not-
what.
Right, we don't
stays on the
determine
National
that,
Register.
yeah.
Yeah, we don't have any.
Does anybody else want to speak to this application? Okay. So I think we can vote to close the hearing. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We need to do written correspondence.
Yeah,
Do we need to do, close it with written correspondence? Or no?
Oh, it's closed.
Okay, great.
thank you.
Let me bring Phil back.
I have to excuse myself. I'm a neighbor to the best amount.
Amber, I locked the door. Will you let,
No, I'd sit down and, all right.
okay, the next application is 80 North Ferry Road, Sylvester Manor. We did receive correspondence and support from Samantha Duran from 14 Linda Road, and correspondence and support from Casey Bailey from 58 North Cartwright Road. Today we received two letters, one from the Ram Island Association and one from the Hay Beach Association, more or less asking that we consider, call it a very narrow approval of the application. We had asked Sylvester Manor for some further information. I think they provided most of that to us. And just maybe get one of them to present a little bit. Do you have someone that's going to come up and present anything here? Please, sir, come up, state your name.
Yes, Christopher Kelly, Toomey Latham Shea, Kelly, Dubin, and Colorado for the applicant. At the last hearing, we were asked to provide documents, specifically conservation easements, covenants, restrictions, and so forth, and also to summarize for the board the uses that we're hoping to include in this catch-all special permit. We provided that in a letter dated May 15th, which was submitted to you. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about that. I know the two letters that you referenced today that raised a concern. I think their concern was specifically about staff housing in an AA zone. And Stephen Searle's here to talk to you or answer questions if you have them, but there's currently no plans to construct any staff housing there. A, it's an expense that we don't have a budget for. Would be the purpose of getting this special permit is really to refurbish the manor house itself, and that's what we're trying to do here. We would certainly be happy to, I think, submit or agree to a condition of approval of the special permit that would require us to come back if there were going to be any other structures built on the property. And I think that would give the board the second bite of the apple that maybe they would feel comfortable with in terms of any other structures consistent with these uses that we're requesting.
And what about expansions of uses?
For instance,
You tell me a use, and I'll tell you if we would be concerned if it would be expanded.
well, the only uses, and I had this discussion with council earlier today, of the uses outlined, the only ones that aren't permitted, yes, the board to recognize certain uses because we want it to be encompassed in, all the uses to be encompassed in one special permit. But there are two things that, first of all, educational and cultural program. That's something that's already been going on, has been going on for some time there. It's related to the history, the farming, the archaeology, offices and staff housing. Occasionally there's a couple of people staying there.
So how much staff housing do you currently provide?
Should I come in?
Please come state your name.
Watch your head.
Yeah, Stephen Searle, Executive Director, Sylvester Manor. We currently have staff housing for Gunnar Wisman, who is our caretaker. It's actually it's a 99-year lease that he has on the property, so that's one thing. There has been staff housing intermittently for years. Obviously, this was at the Manor House, that was a residence. And then even post 2006, when Mrs. Fisk passed away, been intermittently used as for staff housing for the next 8 or so years. And then the farmhouse, which we recently acquired, that also has been intermittently used as staff housing.
So for like how many people in the recent past and then, and it say up to like the past 10 years, have you been providing the housing for, not including Gunner's house?
Right, not including Gunner's house. There essentially, in the manor house, there are 3 bedrooms. So 3 in the upstairs. And in fact, that's the plans that we have to convert into scholar and artisan residences in the upstairs. So that would continue, right? In the farmhouse, that has been intermittently used for, again, we have 3 bedrooms, approximately 3 people. But again, I would say intermittently, as needed.
And you have some interest in producing some staff housing down the road?
I'll put it this way, there is a need, but we have no, as Chris said before, we have no plans for that at this time. We don't have the funding, we don't have plans, we don't have architectural, we do not, that is not in our immediate future.
So,
And the focus, again, just to be clear, it's on sort of existing uses, formalizing, legalizing those, and the construction, the rehabilitation of the manor house in particular. The manor house primarily, and then secondarily the farmhouse. And I can go through each of those if you want in more detail, but there's no other improvements that we are planning at right now.
and something that, I think people are also concerned about is special events. How many big special events do you have each year? I mean, and how many do you aspire to have?
Right. That's a good question. There was sort of a pre-pandemic and then there was a post-pandemic time. Since the pandemic, we have usually one big fundraiser. That's our Farm to Table, which is at the end of June. That's been happening for the past 12 years. We have one big concert, usually at the end of August. We will have smaller events at the farm, Shakespeare events, smaller. And then we will sometimes have weddings. Now, we looked at our records. I think at the last meeting, I said the last wedding was in 2019. It was actually 2021, but we haven't had one since. Not to say that we wouldn't again, but we are in no way going to become a wedding factory. That's just not in our mission. It doesn't go well. But it's not to say we wouldn't have a wedding again in the future.
What was the size of the wedding in 2021, do you recall?
Probably about 200. 150. 150 to 200.
So, I mean,
No, that's-
but you would offer yourself as a wedding venue?
It's possible. It's not inconceivable. We've done it before. But we would always want to do it. We'd want to be good neighbors. So we don't want to have events every weekend. We don't have the staff or the capacity to do it every weekend. It's not the thing that is going to bring in a whole, it brings in a little bit of money, but it really isn't a huge revenue generator. It's not on mission. It's not exactly on mission. So, those are the things, events in general, we have to do it to the scale and scope which we feel as an organization is not going to overtax us.
But no specific numbers or any of that?
No. We would obviously, these would be seasonal things. We don't have the space for it. Everybody would have to bring in things, have to bring in everything. So I don't have an exact number. There's no regulation necessarily to that effect, rules or regulations.
I mean, right now you would be permitted to have a special event on your property just like anyone else on residential property.
Right, and the property is 236 acres.
Right, I understand that, sir, yeah. Although we're not looking for a special permit for 236 acres, right?
Correct.
That's, how many acres are we looking for a permit for?
It's 133.
Of which 20-something are preserved, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. 24 more or less with the Peconic Land Trust and the preservation thing that you have going with the Manor House as well, right?
Correct. Plus the 10. So how many, excuse me 1 second, how many is
About 40 acres.
40 is preserved, yes.
40 out of
out of the 133.
Okay, so we're really talking about 93 acres. Okay, and it's still a substantial piece of land. So, you know, I do think that there is a concern that that we're going to be pre-approving things that we don't have plans for. And you know, I think that's a legitimate concern. I think that if in the future, let's say you decided you wanted to build a dormitory for 10 people, 20 people, 50 people, I don't know what it would be. I do think it's right that at that time, the town of Shelter Island, the people of the island would have a chance at a full and fair hearing, and as you would too.
Yes.
So I do think, you know, I agree with your attorney here that, you know, any sort of building of structures is something that would probably trigger a trip back here, depending on how this all goes. The question for me becomes sort of the quantity in a use. So now you have your bylaws don't allow you to be a school, don't allow you to have a nursery school, but you have some sort of a lease or business arrangement with an entity that operates a school on your property. And I'm curious, like, so down the road, could you lease, I don't know, a 99-year lease with someone to operate a charter school on the property? Is that, you know, could you have Sylvester U on the property? I don't know. It's so I just want to make sure that whatever happens with this application, that the approval is for what you're doing.
Right.
And allows you to renovate the manor house, but doesn't open the door to things that we don't even know what they are. And I think that's kind of, I think, what we heard from the Ram Island Association and the Hay Beach Association.
But you make good points, and this wasn't originally the pathway we had hoped to go down. We had hoped to work with the town to pass a zoning amendment. They decided, well, why don't you just go in for this, you know, a catch-all special permit and get, you know, legalize what you got there. We'll issue the building permit to fix up the manor house. So we followed the instructions of the council to the board and the town board to do that. So we're doing what we're told to do.
understand, yeah.
Yeah, we get it. And we just want to make sure that we're threading the needle right here so that at the end, whatever approvals are given, reflect the approval of something that's currently happening and doesn't allow for an expansion, not only of the building, but of that type of use.
We are also subject to site plan approval.
Well, I understand that. But, you know, that's once you're at site plan, it's the use would already be something that was a permitted use. And so I just want to make sure that wherever we wind up here, that we're not opening a door to somewhere that, you know, there may be I think in one of the letters said, you know, somewhere down the road, a different board running Sylvester Manor. And we have to think about the future and protect the island, you know, from our actions here, I guess.
I think the board can protect those interests by having conditions to the whatever approval they're inclined to grant. Reasonable conditions can narrow things down and contain those problems.
Okay. Tim, let me ask you, is it all right for us to ask for them to enumerate like the numbers, the amounts, the quantities of, you know, the intensity of each use as it's currently operated, I guess?
Like to communicate it to us so that we are not setting the conditions necessarily, but that we are agreeing to conditions that they want that are limited and not, they're not catch-all, they're not, you know, so open-ended.
Yeah, so we can do that. I suspect, not provide your answer for you, but I think you've done that with the submission here, but.
No, we outlined what the board requested, which was what are we actually asking for in terms of relief? We didn't put parameters on those as you're requesting now. we're happy if the board were to close the record tonight to submit even a draft determination that would include conditions about special events, about staff housing, about structures, additional structures, so that the board would get a second bite of the apple if any of those things came up.
I don't think it would be in the form of a draft determination, but
A list of conditions, we can do a list.
even if it wasn't conditions, I think it's a identification of the present uses that you're seeking.
But not just qualitative, quantitative, I think is really the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I interject something?
Yes, sir, please.
Your comments have been about sort of the practical constraints of what you can do, and I'm sure the board appreciates that, but that's not, that doesn't set any boundaries.
Right.
That your ability to do things can change in the future. So really, we need an articulation of exactly, the limits of what you're currently doing that you're seeking permission to continue doing. And again, it goes to the activities themselves. And if this word covers it, the intensity of that use in terms of if it's an event, amount of people, if it's something else, the frequency throughout the year, those type of things.
Right, okay. I think the thing that I would I've not thought about this a whole lot, but my biggest concern would be that we're not held to a different standard from
Than who?
other organizations, operations,
Um,
businesses in the town. That would be my only
So
concern.
that's-
I'm
I
not,
mean, businesses are businesses, you're a not-for-profit, which is not a business, right? I mean, so I don't know what
And operating not with permission yet on a lot of what you're doing.
right, well, I'm talking about events specifically. For example, I mean, because we operate like a business, I mean, we're not-for-profit, so I suppose we're sort of a hybrid, we're somewhere in between, but there are other not-for-profits on the island. And again, I just would want to make sure that we are able to do programming that can then be expanded, of course, that can continue to grow. But I also understand your concerns that, yes, there's, there's maybe things down the road that we haven't thought of. And especially for those things that come down the road, like if we had to, or what you're saying is we would come back to you and say, hey, we have this new idea, I don't even know what it is, but we have this brand new idea. Would you, ZBA board, be willing and able to consider it?
I mean, we don't
I'm
want
sorry,
to be event planners or approvers, but.
I'm not talking about events even
Yeah.
necessarily. I'm just saying just a new idea. Phil, you had a good example maybe of like, I don't know, a school, a charter. I don't know, again, something we haven't even envisioned. I would just want to make sure that we'd be able to come back to this board and say, hey.
there's no limit on the number of times you can come to the door. We could tell you never come back, and then you could come back next week, right? That's it.
I think I know what the board would like, and so I'm happy to try to submit something to meet your concerns.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else to present to us tonight?
No, if possible, though, I'd like to get the record closed so that we can.
Okay, well, we'll see how it goes.
Very good. Thank
You're
you.
eager to close the record, I can.
Thank you so much for your consideration.
Okay, is there anyone else here who would like to comment on this? Please, if you want, you stand up, state your name, Mr. Gaynor.
Hello, Mike Gaynor, 8 Cobbetts Lane. I'm on a direct adjacent neighbor to Sylvester Manor Educational Farm. I'm not going to restate my whole argument again. You know where I stand. I'm not supportive of the applicant. I am very supportive of the historic site and the town doing everything we can do to protect it. I'll spare the suspense when I speak with my wife and she tells me a story. I always tell her to tell me the end first. I think the word concession has been used several times here. I lost count how many times it was used. I think there is a concession that actually has some teeth that could be applied to this scenario to help the manor get approval for their special permit. And I'll present that at the end really quickly after I go through all the things I want to say, but I'll keep this very short. What I do have a problem with is all these concessions that don't have teeth. They've been operating illegally for over a decade. on that property, having illegal events, doing all sorts of illegal stuff, one thing after another, and nobody's taking any enforcement action against them whatsoever. So there's no reason to believe whatever they document in terms of concessions, that anybody's going to enforce it going forward. This board hasn't done it. You can't do it, right? You've said that last week. That board hasn't done it. They've taken no action against them. The police department doesn't take any action against them. The fire department doesn't take any action against them. And so there's no reason to believe. But when I finish my presentation, I'll give a concession that I think would be good, a benefit to the community. Your role here is to make sure that there are benefits for the community. And I think I've got a good one. This is a blow up of the document that you have put in your appendix, and I amended it a little bit. This is an Appendix A. And I'm sorry, I'm supposed to present to the board here, not to everybody inside of the room. This is the Sylvester Manor property right here, and I've got a list of questions for myself so I can stay on track, and I'll rip through them really quickly. First question I want to know, have you folks visited the site yet?
I have been to Sylvester Manor.
You guys have all went there and taken a look at it and gone through a tour of the property. It's obviously a massive property right there. So that's good to know. Thank you. I was hoping we could keep the record open until everybody had gone there and taken a look at everything that I've described here. Does everyone here agree that African slaves were human beings? Right? I think we can all agree that. You guys don't need to, respond. No, it's important, man, because they have a cemetery there with several hundred people buried inside of it. And inside of that application, there's no reference. We're talking about all the uses that they're documenting inside of there. They have a cemetery with several hundred African slaves there, and it's not mentioned inside of that document. You spend, 15 minutes today on, what are we on, the fourth application on the deck over there, about talking about a deck inside of the Heights. Somebody needs to talk about this cemetery over there. This is wildly inappropriate that they have a cemetery there, and they're having weddings and concerts and all of these things going on there. I think it needs to be put inside of the application, that cemetery exists there. That's very unusual. We have I don't think you're going to see Penny Moore listing any single-family AA zone homes with 200 dead people buried inside of it. So I think it needs to be made into the application.
Mr. Gaynor, you can feel free to state rhetorical questions, but we're not here to answer your questions. We're here to present to us.
100%. I'm presenting them as questions. I'm not expecting you to answer them. Okay. Thank you for making that statement, though. And these are going to sound like some harsh statements, but I think they're very fair. One of the first times I got into it with the Manor is when I found out that they filmed that concert over there, right where this gravesite is at. And I contacted Sarah Gordon, and we got into it very, very hard. I feel very strongly about that. Would Auschwitz or Arlington National Cemetery be a good place to operate an event business, have concerts, dancing? A couple of 100 feet from where this cemetery, where these people are buried, this is where they have their big 450-person party that they're going to have illegally next month with a band and a dance floor over there. Should that be happening next to a cemetery? What would Father Peter say about that? If we tried to have events over at Our Lady of the Isles Cemetery, that's completely inappropriate. That needs to be put inside of this application. We shouldn't be doing that. Why is the town board, the police department, the building department, and the fire department allowing them to have an illegal 450-person party? That's happening at the end of this month, right? Why is that happening? Why is nobody taking enforcement action? That's germane to this conversation. There's this pattern of bias about this applicant, and they do all these things, and nobody is doing anything to stop that from happening. What would happen if the Rams Head Inn, where's Pam at? What would happen if the Rams Head Inn went and had in a AA zone, went out and had a 450-person event over there? If they can do it over there without getting any approval for that, can my friend Andrea Carter go do that? I think Pam Demarest and the rest of the Ram Island Association might have a real problem with that. This is the question for the board that I do deserve an answer for. And Tim, I think you can answer. What impact will that fact have on this application? If they're going to have an illegal event that they didn't get permission for, that is not a benefit to the community, a month from now on June 26th, which they're absolutely planning on doing. Stephen Searle has told them they've done that. They didn't take the time to go in front of the board. They're not even asking for permission. What impact does that have on the board? Do you have to consider that they're doing these illegal things while they're going through this process? They're literally going to have this illegal event at the same time while they're saying they're being good neighbors and doing all of these things. Does the board need to consider that?
You're free to make that observation that that issue, though, is not something that's within the scope of this application. If you're asking are there current activities relevant to this application? By definition, people that are coming before the zoning board, whether it's for a variance or special permit, are seeking to legalize something that's not presently within the scope of the code.
These uses though, right? Correct, they've talked about, they're planning on having these wedding uses, these corporate event uses, all of these different uses are planning on taking place there. Should we not consider the thing that they're asking for permission for, that they're going to do it whether you give them permission or not? And I simply want to know, does the board need to consider that? Should that be a topic that you consider, that they're going to do this illegal event? The town board, our town supervisor's taken no action to stop them from doing it. Our police chief has taken no action against them. The building department's not going to issue them, is going to either issue them or not issue them building permits, but that's not going to be a problem. Is that not a problem? What standard does that set for everyone else in this community? You had a young couple come up here and they're trying to legalize an illegal bedroom on a third floor, whatever it is, some sort of use, and those folks are being denied a permit for that. That's money out of their pocket. But these folks, nobody takes any enforcement action against them. They can do whatever they want. That's completely inappropriate. Why are they parking hundreds of cars for their illegal event that ends at 10:30 p.m. behind my house on ag protected land? They've said that these two parcels of property are not included inside of the application. This one's 22 acres, this one's another 50 acres over here. Go, next time you do a site visit, you can do it tomorrow, go drive over there. Stephen Searle can comment on this. They were out there yesterday, they're mowing this area back here. Every time they mow this property back here, they're having an illegal event inside of that property. So they're either gonna park cars there or they're gonna put tents there. I brought this for you, this is from last year. This is Mike's house. This is the generators that they put out there. This is what they're doing on that property right there. You can take a look at it. And here's another set of generators. All of these pieces of equipment, that's my house right there. They mowed that lawn, they put up that tent back there. So the part of the application that they want omitted from this application is not part of their use. It's absolutely part of their use. That's what's going on back there. You can go drive over there tomorrow. They're mowing the land. They're going to park all those cars for this event, for this illegal event over there. And they're going to have generators over there. That was dead in the middle of August. The grass was all burned up. And they left that generator and cans of gas out there for days. I was waiting for the thing to start on fire. Am I the only person who's concerned that the gig staff that will work at this event will be smoking dope and sleeping in their cars when the ferry shuts down 1 hour after the party ends, when we're all asleep? Because that's what's going to happen. They're going to have 450 people out there, and they're going to have somewhere around 50 employees taking care of them. We've all had 10 people over to our house before for a party. They're going to shut down this event. They're feeding these people dinner. There's unlimited liquor, all this different stuff. They're going to have all these gig employees that are going to be working there that drove out from the city. They're all going to sleep in their car that night out there because they got to break that whole thing down. And then they're going to pull a big fat doobie out of their pocket. They're going to crack open some wine. They've worked all evening. They're going to sleep in their cars, and they're going to flick it, and that place is going to start on fire. Both Governor Hochul and the state fire marshal has sent out a memorandum to municipalities all throughout Long Island telling them that this fire issue is a real issue, that climate change is a real issue out here right now, and that place is a fire trap. It's ready to light on fire. I've showed you the pictures. You should go take a look at it. They should not be having these events over here. What's going to happen when this place catches on fire like West Hampton, LA, Maui, Leon Restaurant, Cheekwat, and the Dory? In the past 2 years, all three of those restaurants, all food service places, all caught on fire. They're going to go cook they're going to set up a field kitchen out there, and they're going to cook dinner for 450 people. West Hampton started on fire because somebody was making s'mores in their backyard. And then these folks are going to set up a field kitchen out there, and then everybody's going to go to sleep. It's 10:30. All the gig employees are going to be hanging out there. The ferries are gonna be shut down. They're gonna have all this stuff going on. This place is a fire ready to happen. And we're all gonna be asleep in our beds. If that happens, that place is going up. Go take a look at their woods over there. They should not be having events at this property. They just got another $1.8 million from New York State to subsidize their event business, which is exactly what's going on over there. They've taken tens of millions of dollars from public and private donors for that property, and you've seen that property over there. They just picked up another $1.8 million. Literally, they just sent out an email to everybody. Tens of millions of dollars, and look at the condition of that place. They are inappropriate stewards of that property. It is falling down. And we're going to be led to believe that this time, once they get the special permit, which the only reason they're trying to get the special permit because they're getting a grant from the Mellon Foundation, and the money's going to walk in the front door and out the other. They want to get more money. Meanwhile, our taxes in town are going through the roof over here, and these guys are getting money for what public benefit? Finally, where are they going to park all of these people? Inside of their application, and we all know this is not true, inside of their application, they're saying that they have 18,000 people visit that property every year. 18,000. That's 5 times every man, woman, and child on this island. That's absolutely an untruthful, unfactual statement. They have lied on that application in order to get their hands on that $1.8 million. But let's say for a second, 18,000 people are going to go here. Where are they going to park? Where are they going to put parking for 18,000 people to visit this property? Shouldn't we do a traffic study? I get if there's going to be 18,000 people going here, well, first of all, 7 months out of the year, the place is shut down, right? It's the dead of winter. It's a farm stand. So nobody's farming anything. So it's all going to happen in May, June, July, August, September, maybe. 18,000 people are going to come here in 5 months. Where's all those cars going to go? So clearly, you know what my position is about all of this. They've picked up all this dough left and right. This parcel of property right here is Suffolk County, the federal government, and the town of Shelter Island bucked up $8 million. This to supposedly preserve this land, only to be used for agricultural use. Now they're parking cars on it. This parcel of property over here, they picked up another $14 million. This parcel of property is my favorite right here. This was Gordon's work. For this parcel of property, this is an unsubdivided 16-acre parcel of land that nobody could build on, not physically possible. It's unsubdivided. It's right across from the IGA. We paid them $2,055,000 to protect this land from development that could not be developed. You couldn't build a house on it. The only people that could build anything on it would be the manor themselves. And we gave them $2,055,000. You know what we got for that? A promise not to do what they would already not do. This is the concession I would like to see happen, right? We're doling out money left and right to preserve land from development all throughout the United States. If you guys want to do something that's a benefit for the community and they want to do something that's a benefit for a community, this guy right here, this one that's not on their application, in 2019, they received 11 acres from Eben Ostby, the heir to this entire property, as part of his whole tax write-off thing that he's got going on. This parcel of property right here has development rights intact. They should donate this to the town for it. They got no use for it. They can't develop it. They own it. It's 11 acres. We just went and deployed $3.8 million on South Cartwright over there to go pick up 6 acres. There's no reason for them to own this property. They can't build it. They're supposed to be protecting the historic Sylvester Manor. Let them protect it. Let them give them this. Give this to the town right here. It's 11 acres. They got no use for it. As they say, anything could happen with them, right? The next group of manor people could be, want to take this property and turn around and sell it and build a house right there. They have no use for it whatsoever. You guys want to do something that's beneficial for the community? Get them to donate that to the town of Shelter Island. Cost them nothing. Their basis was $0. Eben Ostby gave it to them for a donut hole. They could donate that parcel of property and you'd have my full support with Sylvester Manor and you guys getting all the special permits you want. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gaynor. Thank you. Anyone else care to weigh in? Please step up. Okay, yeah, I'm going to wait for Zoom until after we take care of the room. Thanks. Sir, please state your name for the record.
Bill Mastro, I'm also president of the Hay Beach Association. I can give you this because I have my email address. Yeah, thank you. I want to thank you. You read our letter. You responded to our letter. You understood our letter. We were not in any way, shape, or form objecting to Sylvester Manor. We love Sylvester Manor. We just are concerned that the application, as it was stated, was somewhat vague, especially as to the future. And you addressed most of our issues. The one thing I would like to still say at this point, actually two things, is please don't close the meeting tonight. We'd like to see the submission that they make. We think that should be available to the public so that we can make any comments regarding how it should be crafted when you do give the approval. And hopefully you give the approval because the Manor House needs to be fixed and hopefully quickly. Second is maybe even a little broader than just this one, but when resolutions are done that really have a lot of specificity to them, make sure that they are clear, that they are not meant to be precedent set, so that they cannot be used in other situations that maybe aren't quite appropriate, where people can eventually go to court or whatever and say, hey, look what you did there. Be specific. This is unique, and it's unique for the following purposes. And in this instances, I think there's a lot of good reasons. There's a lot of uniqueness. They are a great organization, and we support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to weigh in here? Jan? Name for the record?
Yes, my name is Jan Sudo. I'm a resident of Rum Island neighborhood. I'm here on behalf of Rum Island Association. Our president is traveling today, so he was not able to come and testify in front of the ZBA. So just to follow up on what Bill Mastro said, we concur. He pretty much set the case. We are very concerned about precedent setting of very broad application to recognize the existing structures and uses, but also some unspecified future uses which we don't know what they are. And that creates a danger. For example, seeks recognition of these uses as either permitted or accessory uses in AA zone. That sounds like redoing the uses permitted in AA zone, which should not have happened before being first recommended by comprehensive plan. I've tracked comprehensive plan pretty carefully through its development. I don't recall that draft comprehensive plan is proposing to expand the uses in AA zone like that. Okay?
I mean, yeah, but you're talking about a draft of something that's, I don't think that's applicable here.
Yes, of course, but in a current comprehensive plan from 1994, there's also no such use.
I agree.
Okay, and the discussions in the new comprehensive plan also do not permit such use. Okay, so we're concerned that this is like rewriting a zoning, what's permitted in AA zone, just because Sylvester Manor wants it, okay, to have catch-all so they can do, to whatever scope they want. So that's one concern. The other possibility that could be interpreted, there's various interpretation of what the attorneys for the Sylvester Manor submitted. Interpretation that this broad permit could amount to spot zoning. And obviously that's not something that is generally speaking well received because it has implications on the neighbors and so forth. So in summary, we don't object to Sylvester Manor getting a permit to recognize existing structures and uses, okay? What we object is to give them a permit for something we don't know what they're gonna do, okay? if they finalize their plans for, let's say, some kind of employee housing, which right now they're saying they're not gonna do, they can come to ZBA again and present specific plans, and then we know what we're talking about. Right now, it will amount to blank permit, and that's just too broad. And then finally, I would like to echo what Bill Master said. Please don't close the hearing. Seems like the attorney for the applicant are very eager to close the hearing. They asked for it first time when they presented the original submission, when the public didn't even have access to this document. We got that later. And the submission dated May 15th, that was only last Thursday. So we didn't have, the public didn't have time to sufficiently analyze what is they asking for. We know they're asking for a lot, but that takes time to analyze what the implications on other areas of the island would be. So we're asking respectfully that you don't close the hearing, but keep it open until the next scheduled hearing, which I believe is June 26th. Is that correct?
Something like that.
Yeah. So the public has sufficient time to analyze the implications in other areas.
I'd just like to point out, I don't think they're asking for a redo on the zoning code. There is a section under AA zoning that talks about principal uses that are permitted through the issuance of a special permit by the ZBA. And there is a section that they are relying on that allows, if it's similar to this, that, and the other thing, so I don't think we're talking about any kind of rewrite of the code here. And, I know that their attorney says that they had actually requested that the town board redo the code, a section of the code, to try to fit them into it. And I do think the town board has been wise to wait, hopefully, on any major changes to the zoning code until we have the updated comprehensive plan.
Correct. Yes. I'm not saying that they're explicitly asking to redo. Well, if you read the sentence on the top of the submission, May 15th, they're asking to add those uses as permitted in AA zone. They didn't say as permitted for them, for Sylvester Manor. They asked for AA zone, so it's subject to interpretation. Maybe it's just an awkward sentence, or that's not what they meant, and so forth. But basically, one could read that and say, it's basically we're gonna be redefining AA zone right now.
We won't be redefining it here.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's basically it. But I want to finish that Ram Islands Association, just as other associations, in particular, Hay Beach, are the supporters of Sylvester Manor. I myself am supporter and support. So we don't object to legalize the existing structures and uses such that they can renovate the house. We just object to overly broad application catch-all, which can have unintended consequences that we'll regret later on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here in the audience would like to weigh in? Yes, no? All right, Jess, can you see if we have anybody in Zoom land? I think somebody did want to weigh in before. What's that? They're not in the room anymore. Okay, does anybody else out in Zoom land wish to make a comment here? No? All right, so I guess we have to decide if we want to close the hearing or leave it open. They're supposed to submit some more stuff to us. It's a question of whether or not the things that they're going to submit to us are substantial enough that it's important that the public has a chance to comment on them. I know this is an important application. I want to make sure we get it right.
For that reason, we should keep it open.
Yeah,
I think we should keep it open.
Okay, so I guess then we're gonna, can I have a motion to adjourn until June 25th?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Do you want to get a written submission by a certain date in advance of that?
Yeah, you know what, if you could submit what we're asking for, I don't know, a week before, is that?
This came a week before.
Yeah, so maybe 2 weeks, 2 weeks from now, more or less? So there'll be by June 11th.
Yeah, exactly.
All right? Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, we're going to move on. Next hearing is 8 Hilo Drive, Glasser. I'll read the public notice. Do you have the public notice?
Yeah, we do. Here.
Sure. Christina, maybe just give us a minute here while we're just going to read the public notice. I'll let everybody get out. They're going to get out.
These highlights.
All right,
Okay.
when we read the public notice,
Yes, a hearing on the application of Christopher Glasser, owner
Oh.
of 8.
stop. We need to get Punch back.
Oh, yes. we-
Right.
Oh, no, he's out. Oh, no, he has recused from this as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. A hearing on the application of Christopher Glasser, owner of 8 Hilo Drive, Shelter Island, New York, which is located in Zone A, near Shore Overlay, and is more specifically described on the Suffolk County Tax Map as 700-14-2-31.3. The applicant wishes to legalize entry landing and stairs constructed in the front yard setback. An area variance is required from the Town Code 133-6B5A to hold 31.8 feet setback where 40 feet is required.
Christine, please state your name and
My name is Christine Beckwith, and I'm here this evening to represent Chris Glasser, the owner of 8 Hilo. They're asking for a variance on 3.2 feet, which is approximately 3 steps in front of the home. The property was a challenge to build on, as you can see. This home is only 24.3 feet deep because of the 100-foot wetland setback and the 40-foot front yard setback. Home was built approximately 1 foot from wetlands and sits on the front yard setback of 40 feet. The town allows 5 feet within the front yard setback for stairs, which our platform with stairs is a total of 8.2. The main reason for the stairs to be built as shown was mostly considered for emergency situations where someone needs to be removed from the home in a stretcher if there is a fire inside the home for better access and exiting. Hooking up a set of 10-foot wide stairs towards a home is much better than alternative stairs to a platform where then a 90-degree turn is required to go inside the home. The way that the stairs are built currently allows a motorized chair to be attached or a wheelchair lift to be installed and still allow access for those walking up and down the stairs. Since a platform is required before the entry door and the house elevation was required by the DEC, we are left with this situation. Again, we are asking for 3.2 feet variance for 3 steps in front of the home.
Christine, let me ask you, what were the plans like originally? I'm certain that if
Originally, there was a platform in front of the front door and then 2 sets of stairs that went down on each side.
parallel to the house.
Yes.
And those wouldn't have required a variance. And now we're here because in the interest of safety, you've constructed the I'll call it a more grand entrance to the house.
Yes.
Is the home for sale currently?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And
So the original plans had the steps going off the side, but it was built this way instead?
Yes, the set of plans actually, the construction set of plans actually had the steps coming out the front and also to the side a little bit. It was all physically attached, but the DEC approval survey had them coming down the sides.
So how did the disconnect happen
Yeah, how
of the
did that-
plans not
yeah.
being executed? Yeah.
The set of plans were done by the architect, whereas Matt Sherman was the engineer. So it is two different entities. So the architect went ahead and did what he thought would be best for the house, basically.
So did he follow the building department stamped approved plans?
In a way, yes, because the front set of stairs are in. We just didn't also do the side as well. So it came in like on a 45-degree angle.
But the front set of stairs wouldn't have been in the
Wouldn't have
setback,
been in the-
because then you would have gotten a denial letter.
Right.
Exactly.
Um, I have a hard time understanding the disconnect between the plans that were filed and the as-built. Tim, can you think of any other things that we ought to be asking here?
Well, I think, and part of this is, you know, maybe you've addressed this in part, but the big picture is, what is the benefit that you're seeking to obtain by this variance so that the board can consider whether.
Well, I took the photographs of the front of the house so that you can physically see it, if you haven't been by the house yet. So most of that is approved. It's only 3 feet of it, so it's 8.2 feet from the house. The town allows 5 feet. So because of the fact that the house needed to be at a certain height and the ground is at a certain height, we have a certain amount of stairs that we need to accommodate for.
It becomes an issue of willful, ignoring of plans and then coming to us to rubber stamp, like these as-built things, and it's becoming more common, and that's, I think, problematic.
Could the platform be made smaller so that the stairs didn't intrude so far into the setback?
They could. I think the platform is approximately about 4 feet right now. We could bring it back a foot, so then it only is in by 2.2. Because I think the
Framed
minimum.
another way, my question or point is that there'd be a question of whether the principal benefit that you're seeking the variance for is to not have the burden of undoing what's there versus.
Ideally.
Versus
Right.
some specific identified benefit of why it needs to be the way it is.
Right. Ideally, if we can leave it the way that it is, that would be great. But if you guys are requiring for us to pull it back as far as legally we can, to get a variance for smaller footage, we would certainly,
Do we have a copy of the original building plans?
No, but we could request.
Yeah, I would like to see the original building plans.
I sent it via PDF, but I could, with that.
Oh, we
I don't
see
know if we
that.
received that.
Yeah. Was it sent to Christina?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. We can ask.
We'll ask Christina for it. It's just not in our application packet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Presumably, the plans that were submitted didn't run afoul of the setback, or there would have been a.
That's right.
Denial letter.
Denial letter, that's correct.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see those.
And I can also submit like the exact depths of that platform and send you guys an email.
Sure, that'd be great. And also, maybe we just request the building department give us that original plan as well. All right, we can do that, right, Tim?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to close this and let me ask, do you have anything else to present to us, Christine?
No, that's it.
Okay, is there, please, let's see if anybody else wants to weigh in.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody wants to weigh in, please step up and state your name.
My name is Dick Baker. I live on Hilo Drive as well. I'm also the president of the Hilo Shores Property Owners Association. You know, the 3 feet is not a big deal, but I happen to know from some firsthand experience that when architects design things that don't work out, they kind of get cascaded for it as well they should. I don't understand how they kind of missed this, whether it was an architect or the builder. Somebody should have figured out some time ago that they needed a proper entrance. They could have recessed the entrance inside the building, but spec builders don't like to lose square footage. And I suspect that has a lot more to do with it than they came after the fact, because it isn't a big deal. But I don't know, I guess you need to speak to an EMT to find out about the structure coming out the house, whether it can, I suspect they can make right turns, they can come down stairways that are steep nowadays. I think they've come a long ways from carrying an 8-foot stretcher. But that's something that I don't know the safety implications of that. But it just seems to me that this was a very self-inflicted wound that the builder and our architect should have seen, somebody should have seen a long time ago, and that it didn't meet the setback code. So, as I said, it's not a big deal. I don't think 3 feet. I think it's a big deal that they missed it, and people come to see you for these things, and there are probably a lot of spec builders that do that. So I just want to give you my 10 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to weigh in? Anybody out in Zoom land wish to weigh in? No? I mean, I think we could close this probably and leave it open to written correspondence until the 11th of June. I would like to request Christine to, still what she said, get something from the building department. And let me ask you, Tim, could we request a narrative from the building department, or is that something that's not really a thing here?
No,
Okay,
no.
okay, that's great, fine. We'll just ask them for the plans. All right, so can I have a motion to close the hearing?
I'll make a, Fred.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So we need that by June 11th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, somebody get Punch? There he is. All right, the next hearing is 23 Tuttle Road, Matheson. Yeah, Tuttle Drive, I don't know what's Tuttle Road.
Oh, yeah.
Lynn, will you read the legal notice, please?
Is that correct, Matheson? Matheson. A hearing on the application of Alexandra Matheson, owner of 23 Tuttle Drive, Shelter Island, New York, which is located in Zone AA reverting to A, near shore overlay, and is more specifically described on the Suffolk County Tax Map as 700-11-1-15.2. The applicant wishes to legalize unpermitted conversion of existing detached garage to a garage with accessory sleeping quarters and is seeking a variance from Town Code, Shelter Island Town Code 133-6B5B2 to hold an 8.4-foot side yard setback where 20 feet is required. Further, an area variance is required from the Town Code Section 133-7E3A for a 203.5 square foot accessory sleeping quarters where 480 square feet is required.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, will you state your name for the record?
My name is John Bennett, and the firm name is Bennett and Reed. We're at 212 Windmill Lane in Southampton, New York. So just let me know if I proceed.
Please proceed.
Thank you. This is a request for dimensional relief to establish conversion of a portion of an existing detached garage. So it's a detached garage and a ZBA permitted pool house, although that variance, as I'll explain to you later, had a durational limit on it, which is expired. So we're here not only to revive a prior variance, which allowed conversion of this garage structure to a garage and a pool house, but in effect to remove one of the conditions, which was to prohibit sleeping. So now, no cooking, of course. I think this is rather from a land use footprint, a physical footprint, and an activity footprint, a rather light touch. First of all, you start with, of course, the accessory structure with sleeping is a permitted use within the zoning district. So it's not any sort of use variance or anything like that. We're seeking dimensional relief based upon the location and size of the existing detached accessory structure. A portion of the garage was converted to a pool house with a bathroom by a prior owner, possibly as far back as 1974, when the garage was originally built. And then in 2019, a subsequent owner appeared before this board to legalize the pool house, just to legalize the pool house. The application didn't say anything about sleeping. They were there just to legalize the pool house. And relief was granted for that, but it had a durational limit which is expired. So again, part of this application is to ask the board to reapprove the original variance, which had a bunch of conditions which have been met. For example, the original variance said that you have to submit and obtain approval from the health department for the bathroom in there. That's been done. We submitted that as part of the application. But that durational limit for the original variance wasn't met. So we're here.
So it's expired, null, void, it's finished.
It's expired, but we're here to revive that 2019 variance. We're here to revive it. I mean, it's simply put, we're here to revive that 2019 variance, which the board granted the relief to allow the conversion of this garage into a garage/pool house. It had a durational limit, but no circumstances of change as it relates to that. There was a condition in there that said no sleeping that hadn't been asked for in the variance, but the board, I can understand why they put that in there, just to make sure, hey, we're granting a variance for a pool house. You didn't ask us for sleeping, so you can't sleep there. So we're here to ask for the 2019 variance to be revived and take away that sleeping.
I think that's an interesting take.
I've never heard of reviving a variance.
I can go on and on and on about how I think.
Please don't.
Okay. I think that a 1-year durational variance, I've actually litigated the issue, is without some specific nexus between why the limitation is there, is actually not appropriate. But it was done and it wasn't challenged. So really what I would do is ask you to revive, I could say that, reapprove it, whatever it is.
I mean, to me, this is a brand new application, and you're looking for something that's different than what the original application was looking for.
Well, it's not a brand new application to the extent that I think you would be hard pressed to deny merely the reapplication for the 2019 variance, because no conditions have changed.
Well, you can make the argument that whatever conditions in the community have changed, right? I mean, that's. I'm just saying it, but to say nothing has changed, to Shelter Island has changed very dramatically in the last 6 years.
You can never say nothing has changed. It was 6 years ago, but I understand what you're saying. I understand.
Sure, if you wish to speak, you need to come up, state your name, and I'll clarify.
But in any event, so subsequent to the board's decision, the prior owner did not obtain a building permit. That 2019, they were supposed to obtain a building permit and upgrade the wastewater system. The current owner, Mr. Matheson, has done that. In February of 2024, there was a green stamp approval from the health department. It's actually noted on the certificate of occupancy.
And there was approval for health department approval for the existing bathroom within the detached garage structure. Minimal additional improvements are proposed by the applicant. Wants to install a high efficiency air conditioning unit, which was actually allowed by the 2019, the prior variance. As noted in our filing, no new structures are proposed, nor will be any structural or cosmetic changes to the exterior of the existing structure. The denial letter also included a statement regarding a building code concern because there was a garage door between the garage portion of the structure and the pool house. There was a door. So in the application, the floor plan that we filed for the application took that door away. Ideally, the design professional would have put a revision date on it. They're both 11/25/24, but the only floor plan that you have for this proposal that was filed with the application is a floor plan showing no door between the garage and the proposed pool house slash limited.
So this is different than the application that was filed with the building department.
Yeah, and when we filed the denial letter, there was a door here. And what we did when we filed the application was took the door away. Because we didn't want to have to go to the state board, it was easier to take the door away.
I know there's a thing that we've talked about, that we want to make sure that the stuff that comes to us is the same as what the building department has gotten. So I think I just want to request that we get the plan from the building department as well.
Yeah, you want to make sure everything's the same. Yeah, but I will represent that the plan that was filed for the, I will represent that the floor plan that was filed for the denial letter contained a door in between the garage and this habitable area, and we took that away because it's just not worth going to the state board of review, and they probably would have said no, and it's just not worth the time. But anyway, so we took that away, so that's important. So the existing garage maintains a side yard setback of 8 feet. So thus the building department issued the notice to this approval indicating the relief from the required 20-foot side yard setback is required, as shown on the floor plan submitted with the application. This building, I think it's important to note that this building, the one-story frame garage and pool house, I'm not proposing to increase that by 1 square foot. It was granted relief to be maintained at 8.4 feet back in 2019, albeit for a garage and a pool house. Now what we're asking for is something that's a bit of a hybrid. It's really, I mean, I suppose you could call it, it is accessory sleeping quarters. It was quite small. And the benefit to that is that most people, when they come in, they want to make that accessory sleeping quarters as large as they can. Mr. Matheson only wants this for one, at the most 2 overflow people from the house. And the benefit to that also is that once that is established as a separate accessory sleeping quarters, you can't have another one on the property. So people tend to try to push the envelope and make these things like a smaller house on the property. This is actually sort of an interesting application because I'm actually trying to make it smaller than is allowed by the code, which goes to the lack of impact in the neighborhood and the lack of impact generally on the neighborhood, which is the things that you're supposed to look at. So, and also interesting enough is you could have one thing we did, we showed on the floor plan, not for the building as a whole, but the portion of the building that will have, where we're asking to have sleeping there, that portion of the building meets the 20-foot setback. I think that's an important distinction. You could have an accessory setback, you could have an accessory sleeping quarters at 20 feet. And presumably that's to create a setback distance between property lines because living quarters may have more impact on the neighborhood. And I'll say more about the impact on the neighborhood when I give you a bunch of letters of support. But here, you could have accessory living quarters with this 20-foot setback with a window, a series of windows. This garage area actually creates a larger buffer than one from activity. There aren't going to be any windows right at the 20-foot setback. You've got all the structure that creates, in effect, a buffer between the adjoining neighbor, who, by the way, has given us a letter of support. So I think it's important to note that, yes, the structure itself will need a 20-foot setback, but the portion of the structure that's going to be used for habitable space, or proposed to be used for habitable space, complies with the 20-foot setback requirement. So I think that's an interesting distinction. And again, I'm trying to make this as unique as possible. I think it's rare that you would have somebody come in and say, I want an accessory sleeping quarters, but I want to make it smaller than is allowed. By the way, there should be no concern that this is how small this accessory sleeping quarters, which is a mere 203 square feet, has any other building code issues. I was surprised to find how small a room size can be, but under the residential building code, R304.2, it's only required to be 49 square feet. So I didn't want the board to be concerned that there was some building code issue with it. We do need relief from the minimum size requirement for an accessory sleeping quarters. We're about half that size, but we don't have any problem as it relates to the building code. So, and again, I think this creates more of a sound buffer in the sleeping area than you would have with a building that was right at that 20-foot side yard. Let me submit, if I may, a tax map, and attach this tax map or 3 letters of support, which I think is helpful for the board in terms of its determination as to whether or not there's an impact on the neighborhood. So just let me hand them out and then I'll go through them. Talk about them. Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
And one for our clerk.
Walking over there.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bennett.
So I think it's sort of neat because there are 3 letters of support. 2 of them are similar, but one of them is specific and unique, which is nice because we're not just handing you form letters. The neighbors actually wrote these things, which is sort of nice. The first one is from Laura Bowles and Bob Riley, and as you can see, they're adjacent to the property. The subject property is noted sort of light. I'm sorry, my office should have made it a little bit darker, but the subject property, the Bowles, is property shown as A. Yes. Okay. And they said some nice things. They said, we are Alex's neighbors on the side closest to his garage and pool house. So that's important. These are the people that would be the most affected by the variance. We've reviewed his plan and are not concerned. There's nothing about sleeping persons or persons that is inherently noisy or that would add to the potential noise a pool house with non-sleeping quarters use would already have. Further, the cabana portion of the pool house is beyond the 20-foot setback required of accessory buildings with sleeping quarters. They actually looked the application, which is sort of nice. Lastly, Alex completed a renovation. They kept the size of the house of a certain size. It's our understanding that the variance is for putting sleeping quarters only. It would not designate the structure as an accessory apartment, thereby preventing it from being rented. Of course, we have no problem with that. I can't do that under the code anyway, so it's no problem with the condition, just reinforcing that. If someone was to rent this house, they would have to rent the house, and if you were kind enough to grant the relief, the accessory quarters. They would rent it as a unit. You couldn't rent.
Well, I don't think that's exactly true. I think you could rent just the main house and then keep yourself in the sleeping quarters. I believe
have a
that.
problem with saying that it has to be used as for one family only?
No, I don't. In other words.
Sir, if you're gonna.
Ask a question.
No, I did. I apologize, Alex. I just wanted to ask you a question. And if you could come up and identify yourself, and I don't think this board usually swears witnesses, but if you do.
We do not.
You do not. Okay.
I'm Alex Matheson, I'm the current owner, and just as Mr. Bennett said, the previous variance was issued to the previous owners, and they very shortly after that sold it to me, and that's why it expired before I could do anything. I'm the one that updated.
But the question, and I think it's a pertinent one, as the chairman said, there would be nothing that would prevent you from staying in that back quarters and renting the house separately. Would you have a problem with the condition that said either if you're living there or a tenant is living there, these buildings have to be used for one family?
If I'm understanding correctly, yes, that's my expectation. I mostly live there, and I do rent it out in the summer. So
But your tenant, you couldn't have two separate tenants.
No, absolutely not. No intention.
No, but that sound like.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that. I apologize.
Could the owner reside in the sleeping quarters and rent out the main house?
I don't think.
I had no intention or desire to do that.
So
There's no cooking facilities.
you would not be opposed to a
Condition
that
that absolutely. It would have to be what we call in the parlance, a family or the functional equivalent of a family, which means only people, that rented it as an entire unit, or Mr. Matheson and his family would live in both units. Either a tenant or Mr. Matheson's family would have to have occupancy up with the main house and the accessory sleeping quarters.
Okay.
No problem with the condition.
And it would be, even for a tenant, it would still be spillover. I'm sure that it's not a great, thing. It's comfortable, it's clean, it's up to code and all that, but.
But I think, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I
That's
think
totally fine.
we've talked about that concern. We would not have a problem with that condition. I don't want this to be some that could be rented separately, or the homeowner stay there and rent the main house. Then Alex's neighbor across the street supported his application to convert his pool house to permit sleeping quarters and do not believe have a negative impact. And two lots down, Ms. Weinstein essentially says the same thing. So I hand you that for your consideration. And then I would be remiss not to point out that we do have some authority. One is a case of Dolphin versus Shelter Island ZBA some years ago. I'll have a case for everybody and attach that. So that was a case involving this court. I attached the lower court decision and the other division decision. Was affirmed, and also a case in Southampton Village. And what they really stand for is the thought, when you have support, that is a very good indicia that there will be, thank you, that there'll be no impact on the neighborhood. These cases go back a few years, but I'm not aware that they've been all overturned or changed. So the idea is letters of support actually are an indicia of that very important thing that you look at. Is there going to be any change to the character of the neighborhood? You have a 5 parts test, but they're not all weighed the same. If you read Terry Rice's commentaries to the New York State town law, he says that what's the really important element in that 5-part test? And the most important element, which is most heavily weighed, is there going to be impact on the character of the neighborhood? And I would humbly suggest that, given this very, very light footprint, there wouldn't be any impact to the character of the neighborhood. And it appears that the neighbors are of a similar position.
Now, let me ask you, Mr. Bennett.
Sure.
What would stop other, let's say, residents of Ram Island, of Tuttle Drive, from saying, hey, I want to convert my garage into sleeping quarters?
Well, if you remember, you probably could if you could do it in a way that met the setbacks. You could do it as a matter of law if you met the setbacks
Sure.
and you met the size requirements for an accessory structure.
What if you couldn't?
Well, if they came to you and made a proper case, you would either decide yes or no. These cases, as lawyers, we cite a case called Knight versus Malcolm and say, well, you did it for this guy, you did it for the other guy. If you start reading through those cases, when you start slicing the onion, a lot of your decisions are very sui generis. They're very, very limited to the facts. So a lot of cases say, oh, yes, Knight versus Malcolm, we can't decide cases in a discriminatory way, but you can distinguish them. I'm being totally transparent. I recently prevailed in a case against the Southampton Village Zoning Board of Appeals, where that board, with 3 different members than there are there now, I just tell you, it's sort of interesting, denied a pyramid law variance for a client of mine, but that board had in that neighborhood, Meadow Lane, granted pyramid law variances that were 10, 15 times the size of what I had asked for. So in that particular case, the court said, you granted this substantial relief to people. This guy's asking for about 10% of that relief that he had already granted. But in a lot of cases, most cases, it's pretty easy for I think anyway, Mr. Hill will tell you what he thinks is pretty easy for you to limit an application to the facts of the case, peculiarities of the lot, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, and then what about so you're looking for relief from the minimum size required for sleeping quarters. What is to then prevent somebody from, next thing you know, we have somebody with a Home Depot shed coming and looking to turn that into sleeping quarters?
With the existing Home Depot shed?
Yeah, or something similar to that, sure. Well, I'm gonna finish the inside, I'm gonna put in an IA system and,
I think one of the things that allows you to make this case unique is that the portion of the structure that I want to convert to habitable space, that portion of it meets the 20-foot setback. So you have a 20-foot setback for habitable structures for a reason. You want to keep that further away from adjoining properties. And I think I've more than met the spirit and the intent of that law, because the portion of the property, of the structure, I should say, that I'm asking you to allow to be sleeping quarters does meet that 20-foot setback. So I think that allows you.
But I'm talking about the dimensional.
The size.
From the minimum size requirement. Like you could have someone with like I said, a 10 by 12 shed.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you say was the minimum size for a room?
49.
It's 49 square. So someone could have a 6 by 10 shed, and let's say it's not in the setback, and they say, hey, you've been now granting dimensional relief on a minimum size here. Why should you not give that to me?
Well, I brought the minimum size 7 by 7 to your attention, not to suggest that you would ever grant relief like that, but just to give you comfort that a 203.5 square foot accessory sleeping unit in effect would not be violative of the state code. I'm not suggesting that you would grant a 7 by 7 approval for an accessory structure.
But you are suggesting, what is the square footage of the space that we want to turn into a?
203 square feet.
But you are suggesting that we would find a way to grant relief for a 203 square foot.
Yes, although the size of the entire building is bigger than that.
Right.
The garage and the sleeping quarters.
Right.
Yet another way.
But it's you're trying to like bite the apple 2 different ways here. Well, I'm out of the setback, so we're not going to count that part of the building that's not getting developed.
No, I think you have to count it, which is why I'm here. I'm just saying from a policy point of view and meeting the reason why this setback has been created at 20 feet, that I've met the policy
argument, which is to keep it away from adjoining neighbors. I'm not saying I don't have to be here. Clearly, I have to be here. That's why.
I'm just concerned about who's going to be here next, I guess.
No, and I think you should be, but I also think this is unique enough because of the way it was, because of the history of the property, because of the configuration of the property. So let's say, where else would you put, an accessory structure is allowed on this property? Let's look at the survey. I mean, it's a through lot, but let me get the survey. Second, I had a couple copies of it right here. Sorry. Forgive me, I'm just. It's a through lot, but the only other place that you could put it would be in the functional front yard. And I don't think you want anyone putting the accessory living quarters in the functional, in the front yard. And any other place to locate this, which we'd have to, it'd be a very significant expense. We'd have to move the pool. I can't put it that much further towards Ram Island Road in terms of an addition to it, because I'm butted up to a setback there. We'd be disrupting the whole yard and great expense to moving the pool. I think it's the sort of thing that would cause unnecessary disruption to the existing improvements and development of the property. I think there's enough to create a unique enough situation here so that somebody couldn't be throwing this in your face and saying, well, look what you did over here. I'm very sensitive to that, very, very sensitive to that. If I may, let me just, don't forget to add a couple things. I think there's actually a smaller impact that would happen if you were to allow a larger accessory quarters on the property. This is just really for, which could be done as a matter of right, but which is really for some overflow. It's allowed already under the prior variance as a pool house where people will be congregating. We already allowed that in 2019, and the change will allow and continue that previous ability of people to congregate in the pool house, but allow a very limited number of people to sleep in the structure, which arguably is less of an impactful activity in this structure than hanging around the pool. They'll be sleeping. It's type 2 action, of course. There's no significant impact. So where you weigh the balance, I guess the only thing, you know, I don't have to tell you, you have to weigh the benefit that the applicant wants versus any detriment. Don't see, respectfully, any detriment to the neighborhood, any environmental detriment, any impact upon services, or, you know, an aggressive use of the property. We're not trying to add more living capacity to the property as a whole. It could be a larger house where you could have larger bedrooms. So we're not touching the property in a way that wouldn't be otherwise allowed. I guess the only detriment that which is what we're struggling with here, is somebody else coming using this as precedent. But I think it's unique enough so that you can distinguish it from that. I didn't mean to say. I understand why you sort of put that back on me. I didn't mean to say that a 7 by 7, 49 square feet habitable space would be something that you should consider. I just wanted you to have the comfort of knowing that a 200 square foot habitable space is not something that would be violating the state building code. That's all. Yeah. So I don't know if there are any questions. Alex, is there anything you wanted to add?
Well, if you want to speak, you come up to the lectern, please. It's just the way it's not my role. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Sorry. I'll just make 2 quick points, and it may not answer your question, but I would distinguish between the Home Depot shed you talked about in this building. It's a proper structural building. It's been there for, you know, whatever it is, 45 years, 50 years. It's got, you know, a bathroom that's to code. It's got an IA system that's been approved recently by the the county system. So it's a proper structure, whereas a Home Depot shed, I think, is not. The only other thing I'll just quickly say, and it may not be relevant to you guys or not, but I bought the property in 2020. In 2023, in January, I had a full flood, hot water flood. I didn't discover it for a week, so it destroyed the entire house, and I had to do a gut renovation. The insurance was bottom of the barrel insurance. You know, it's very hard to get good insurance out here on the East End and Shelter Island. So I had to wipe out all my savings just to simply restore the house. And I restored it to a nicer house for sure, because it was kind of a cheaply done house before. But nonetheless, I resisted the temptation, which I could have done at that point, because I spent enough money between insurance and my savings. I could have just knocked the house down and put up a 4 or 5 bedroom house. I could have gotten the permissions and so on as of right, but I didn't do that. I really liked the small scale of it. I liked the single floor, the single story. I liked the ranch house, style, and I just decided to make a nice ranch house. So this would just help me to have a little bit more capacity than I otherwise would have. It was a 3-bedroom house. It's still a 3-bedroom house. It's still a small 3-bedroom house. The bedrooms are extremely small. So just to have a little bit of ability to have the occasional guest have somewhere to sleep, not be on a couch, that's really what this is about. It's going to be very infrequent.
Well, let me talk a little bit if I can. I'm sorry. I just want to review the variance that was approved in 2019 with that durational limitation. So it said that it allowed the garage to be a combination garage and pool house. And then it said the following: the structure will not be used as sleeping quarters. That's essentially the condition that we're here to talk about. I did review the application and I reviewed the minutes. The application, there was never a request, I think Matt Sherman handled, there was never a request for sleeping quarters. And that's where the board put that in there. So the structure will not be rented. These are the original conditions. The structure will not be rented. Again, we don't have any problem with the recitation of that again, so that you couldn't have an owner live in this small sleeping quarters and rent out the house. Whoever's using this, whether it's the Mathesons or a tenant, have to occupy both of these structures, have to occupy both of these structures. The structure will not be fully developed, obviously. That goes without saying. We'd have to come back here. Applicant may install heating and air conditioning, including an external condenser, sub to building code, which is the intention. And a new nitrogen reducing septic system must be installed. That was installed. Indeed, the certificate of occupancy, let me get it. It did hand it out. The certificate of occupancy actually makes reference to the installation of that, as well as the, it even cites that, here we go. It's as per Suffolk County Department of Health approval R07-19-0024. There has been that approval for a maximum of 6 bedrooms. So the health department approval carries what we want to do here. Put that bathroom right into the approved wastewater system. So I think I understand your concern. I think you can condition this up enough and talk enough about the uniqueness of the issue, the uniqueness of talk about the configuration of the lot, the fact that it's has the 2 front yards, the fact that the neighbors have been supportive of it, and the fact that, again, this will prohibit any further accessory sleeping quarters on the property, because you can't get 2. You can't have, okay, I've got 1, now I want another one. I would think your code would say that allows 1. So I think it's a light touch from an impact on the property and gets rid of gets rid of an issue that we'd like to legalize. You have any other questions?
Tim, can you think of anything that we should be asking here?
No, I don't think so.
Anyone else have any other questions?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to weigh in? Is there anyone else in Zoom land that would like to weigh in?
Zoom.
No? All right, I think we can close this hearing, right? And leave it open for written correspondence until June 11th. And we'll discuss it at our work session on June 18th. Okay. So can I have a motion to close the hearing?
I'll make that motion. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, can I have a motion to close the meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.